Roswell, alien interview, about the source of material in this book. The content of this book is primarily excerpted from the letter, interview, transcripts, and personal notes I received from the late Matilda O'Donnell McElroy. Her letter to me asserts that this material is based on her recollection of communication with an alien being who spoke with her telepathically. During July and August of 1947, she interviewed an extraterrestrial being who she identifies as Errol, and whom she claims was and continues to be an officer, pilot, and engineer who was recovered from a flying saucer that crashed near Roswell, New Mexico on July 8, 1947. Obviously, anyone reading anything about this most famous or infamous of all flying saucer or alien encounter events must necessarily be highly suspicious regarding 1. The authenticity of the report, and 2. The credibility of the source of information, especially when it appears for the first time after 60 years after the alleged event. I received the aforementioned letter from Mrs. McElroy on September 14, 2007, together with a package of documents. The package contained 3 types of documents. 1. Handwritten notes in cursive on ordinary lined 8.5 by 11-inch school notebook paper, which I assumed had been written personally by Mrs. McElroy. 2. Notes typed on a manual typewriter on plain white 20-pound bond paper, which I am assuming were prepared personally by her. At least both had the appearance of having been written in the same handwriting and or typed in the same typewriter consistently throughout. The writing in the notes I received also appeared to be the same as the writing on the address and return envelope of the manila envelope I received from Navan, Ireland, which was postmarked on September 3, 2007. Since I am not a forensic expert or handwriting analyst, my opinion in these matters is not a professionally qualified judgment. 3. Many types of typewritten transcriptions of her interview with the alien. These were obviously typed on a different typewriter. These pages were typed on a different type of paper and showed apparent signs of age and repeated handling. None of these notes were assembled in any particular order or by date except were indicated by a sentence or paragraph of preamble or explanation by her, or by extrapolation from the context of the pages. Voltaire is quoted as having said, "History is a Mississippi of lies." According to the comments made by the alien in the interview transcripts supplied by Mrs. McElroy, the fundamental lesson of history is that many, many gods have become men, but very few men, if any, have returned to being a god again. According to the alien being Errol, if anything he, she, or it supposedly communicated can be trusted, and if the translation or interpretation of this alleged communication is accurate, the history of this universe is a river of lies, down which the might and freedom of all-powerful godlike immortal spiritual beings ended and was lost in a sea of matter and mortality. Furthermore, according to the very direct and undiplomatic statements made, which seem to express the personal opinion of the alien, if one were traveling the far reaches of the universe in search of a place called Hell, it would be an accurate description of Earth and the inhabitants in its current condition. To further compound, complicate, and magnify the incredible source of the interview transcripts I received from Mrs. McElroy is the fact that they are 1. Based almost entirely on telepathic communication between the alien and Mrs. McElroy. 2. Many of these interviews discuss paranormal activities of immortal spiritual beings. Of course, most scientific authorities are unwilling to acknowledge or perceive spiritual phenomena of any kind. The dictionary definition of the word paranormal is, adjective, 1. Cannot be explained by scientific methods. 2. Supernatural or seemingly outside the normal sensory channels. By definition, people who use the word paranormal are 1. Not able to explain spiritual phenomena, and 2. Spiritual phenomena are outside of their normal sensory channels. In short, scientists suffer from the inability and or unwillingness to perceive and or explain spiritual activities. Therefore, the discussion of spiritual activities or spiritual universes in this book are expected to be understood only by those who can and will perceive such things. According to the time spans related by the alien in several of the interviews, there are a number of compelling and heretofore unknown reasons that suggest the possibility that many extraordinary miscalculations have been made by Earth scientists regarding the origins and antiquity of the universe, Earth, life forms, and events. Of course, these may or may not be accurate either, as time and its ugly stepchild, history, are largely subjective. However, it can be observed that, by contrast with interstellar or macrocosmic time, the historical perspectives of residents of Earth is limited to a relatively microscopic period of time compared to what are considered to be recent times in the chronology of a space travel civilization, much less the entire span of the universe. The geological record of Earth is reckoned by the best guesses of scientists to be about 4 billion years. The antiquity of Homo sapiens in the archaeological textbooks is estimated at only a few million years at most. Even the entire biological spectrum is considered to have existed on this planet for only a few 100 million years, and by and large the personal memory of individual beings on this planet is limited to only one lifetime. All other dates, events, or interpretations of events cited in this book are from terrestrial sources, which are purely subjective observations, conjectures, or inventions of human beings, including those of the author, and must therefore be credited or disregarded by the reader accordingly, considering the penchant of Earth inhabitants to myopia, egocentricity, and general ignorance of the several universes in which we dwell. This book is intended to be an informal presentation of information provided to me 60 years after the fact of a series of interviews between an alien spacecraft officer, pilot, and engineer and an Army Air Force surgical nurse. Roswell, Alien Interview, Matilda O'Donnell McElroy, Biographical Information. Since I have never met Mrs. McElroy in person and spoke to her over the phone only once for about 20 minutes, I cannot vouch personally for her as a credible source of information. In fact, I can't factually substantiate that such a person actually existed, except that I did speak with her on the phone and I received a handwritten material in the mail which was sent from a physical address in Ireland. When I spoke to her on the phone in 1998, I was living in Florida. At the time of our brief phone interview, Mrs. McElroy lived on Scotty Pride Drive in Glasgow, Montana. I know this because I mailed a copy of my book, The Oz Factors, to her as a gift after it was published in 1998. I'm sure she received the book because she refers to it by name in the letter received from Ireland and says that she read it. I did a little research on the internet about Glasgow, Montana for my own interest. Glasgow was founded in 1887 as a railroad town that became popular during the 1930s because President FDR requested that Fort Peck Dam be constructed there, which became a huge source of employment for the Glasgow area. In the 1960s, the population flourished up to 12,000 because of Glasgow Air Force Base, SAC, which was used during the Vietnam conflict and the early part of the Cold War. The base was deactivated and closed in 1969. When I talked to Mrs. McElroy on the phone, she mentioned that she had been relocated there by the U.S. Air Force after her service was completed, and that's where she met her husband, who was an engineer. I don't think she mentioned his first name. However, he worked on building the Fort Peck Dam, which created the massive Fort Peck Lake. Although the dam was finished in 1940, he was a great fisherman and outdoorsman, so he stayed in that area. I gathered that the Irish heritage of the place had something to do with it, but didn't pursue that point with her. I haven't been able to find any record of a McElroy who worked for the dam, but the personnel records from that period are virtually non-existent as far as I can determine. I contacted her during my research for the Oz Factors book because I was led to believe, through a very circuitous line of investigation, that this woman was suspected of having been involved with alien contact at Area 51 or the Roswell crash site or something similar. Through a sequence of circumstantial inferences and accidental referrals, I actually found her number in the phone book and called her up just on the chance that there might really be such a person. Needless to say, when I called her, she was less than forthcoming in her response to my questions. However, I think she was impressed by my genuine and innocent sincerity to get information for my book and realized that I had no nefarious or financially motivated purposes or reason to exploit her in any way. Nonetheless, she did not give me any useful information at that time, except to say that she had been in the Army and was stationed in New Mexico in 1947. She could not discuss anything whatsoever about any kind of incident, as her life depended on remaining silent. Although this piqued my interest even more, it was futile to try to push her any further, so I gave up and forgot about her until last September when I got the package from Ireland. I tried to contact her in Ireland at the return address on the package, but received no reply from her, nor have I been able to find anyone in Meath County, Ireland, who was acquainted with either of them except the landlady from whom they rented a room for a few weeks before their deaths, which seemed to have occurred simultaneously, although I have no real evidence of this. However, the postmark on the envelope she sent to me was stamped at the post office in navy